Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are joined by Sunbelt Commissioner Karl Benson. Commissioner Benson, if you'd like to start us off with an opening statement, and we'll get into some questions.
Thank you, David, and welcome everyone to Boone and the campus of Appalachian State University for the inaugural football championship game for the Sunbelt Conference. I think it's safe to say that regardless of the outcome tomorrow, you look back on the 2018 season, and it really couldn't have been scripted, any better to get these two teams to the championship game. Starting from a non-conference standpoint, we had strong non-conference competition with another win over a Power 5 conference with Troy beating Nebraska, and again just the momentum that carrying over from last year, the excitement, the energy, knowing that the championship game was going to be played for the first time. And the number of teams that were in contention, and especially the last 3 weeks on both sides, East and West, where 6 teams were still playing for something with 3 weeks to go, and talk about meaningful games and significant games and important games, and nothing could have been more than last Saturday with Troy playing here and Louisiana playing at ULM and Arkansas State playing at Texas State, all having an impact on the two teams that finally got here. Looking back kind of globally at the 2018 season, from a regular season that we're now officially in postseason. I mentioned non-conference. We were 21-18 in our non-conference play, and only the second time that we've been in regular season 500 or above. We were 500 2 years ago in non-conference play, and this year we broke that over 500, going 21-18. And what's significant about that is that it captures the scheduling strategy and the scheduling philosophy that I tried to bring to the Sun Belt back in 2012. And that was one of scheduling your non-conference games in a strategic manner, and not in an economic manner. And what I inherited in 2012, were multiple games against Power 5, and whether they were called guarantee games or payday games or whatever you want to call them, our schedules were full of those. And what that, regardless of the amount of money, normally they came up as L's. And as we got into the new system, the new CFP, I knew how important it was for the Sun Belt to be able to compete with our peer conferences, and the computer rankings that are used to distribute the revenue that the 5 conferences get from the CFP, had a direct correlation between the non-conference record and those computers. And that the history shows that the more non-conference games you win, the better overall winning percentage you're going to have, not just individual teams, but collectively. And we know that from a conference standpoint, it's 50-50. So it's the non-conference schedule that's going to determine, how far above or below you are that 500 mark. And I've been preaching for several years about the need to develop a schedule that limits the number of games against Power 5 conferences. And we have been very, very successful. Our presidents, our chancellors, our athletic directors, our coaches have bought into it. And what it means is that we almost had 7 bowl-eligible teams this year. We were 21-18. Only 2 teams did not finish above 500. 8 out of the 10 were either 2-2 or 3-1. We had 2 teams that were 1-3. And that is a direct result of also playing Power 5. We had 12 games against Power 5 teams this year. 12. That means 2 schools played 2 and everybody else played 1. And that's the model that we've wanted to get to and will continue to get to. And a year like this year, where we're 21-18, the computer rankings that are used will take into account the bowl games. But as of today, we are in the number 3 position with our peer conferences. Mountain West and American are above us, and Conference USA and the Mid-American are below us. American and Mountain West non-conference have records above 500. Sunbelt has a record above 500. Conference USA and the MAC have conference records below 500. So that's what we've really tried to get to. And as I finish out my career here with the Sunbelt, if there's one thing that I hope that I've left behind, is this scheduling philosophy. And during the past year, several times, I've seen athletic directors from other Group of 5 conferences talk about these guarantee games and how important those guarantee games are to meet their budget. I have tried to get our athletic directors, and I think that they all are buying into this. These are not guarantee games. These are opportunity games. These are opportunity games that if you win, you're going to get a lot more than whatever revenue. And that's what we're working towards, and that's what we're working for. I think it's a disservice to our student athletes for an athletic director to say the only reason we're playing this game is because we need the 1.5 or 1.8 or $2 million to balance our budget. That just isn't right. It is not right. And the Sun Belt has adopted this, it's embraced it, and we're seeing the benefits, from it. I know that I've shared with you before the financials, the difference between being number 3 ranked and number 5 ranked, is about $3 million. And that $3 million divided by 10 is $300,000 per school. And we start doing that, and you get to the number 2 spot, and you get to the number 1 spot, which is our goal, and there's $357 million. And now all of a sudden, the revenue that's coming from this scheduling philosophy is going to make up for maybe the need to play that second game against one of the Power Fives. So I think that really has allowed us to get to this point. It's a point where we still have 5 bowl games left, and those 5 bowl games will count in the computer rankings. But just in general, I think that is a significant recognition of what our schools have done in terms of scheduling, and I applaud them for that. I've always said from the beginning, it's my goal for the Sun Belt to be that number 1 ranked conference among our peers, and that's who our competition is our peers. And my goal is for Sun Belt champion to be that highest ranked champion. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. There are a couple of opportunities this year had games gone certain ways that both Troy and App State were in positions to get there. But besides that, there were other schools who had scheduled, to be able to maybe just have 1 loss against a Power 5 and be 11-1 and be in contention. And with all the drama that exists today about Ohio State or Oklahoma or the Alabama-Georgia game and what that's going to mean to the 2 semifinal games, there's going to be some drama in the Group of 5. And if UCF wins, obviously they will be the highest ranked championship or the highest ranked Group of 5 and go on to play in the Fiesta Bowl. If they don't and Boise State loses, what we'll see, and remember, it has to be a champion. So a lot of confusion this week about, well, if Central Florida just loses 1 game, they'll still be the highest ranked champion. They have to be the champion. And again, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, assuming that App State wins, they are a champion with an 11-2 record, with a loss against Penn State and a loss against Georgia Southern, with their quarterback going down. And as much as the committee talks about the eye test and taking into consideration injuries and various factors, with Zach not in there, that after the first series, who knows what that game. So we have made it very clear to the committee that, if those 2 scenarios occur, UCF, Boise State, and the 3 champions are App State, Fresno State, and Buffalo, that you put App State's resume up against those other two, and there's not a whole lot of difference. So, can we have a team in contention tomorrow night and Sunday when the committee? Absolutely we can. So, again, games are important and outcomes are important, but we still have some of that planned for us. The way that the bowl season has unfolded, we made the announcement 10 days ago about the New Orleans Bowl and adjusting our contract with the New Orleans Bowl that will allow for the champion of this game for us to know today, so that I don't have to come here today and get questions from you as to, okay, what happens if we know the champion tomorrow is going to the New Orleans Bowl unless they're going to the CFP. And that was really, really important to us. We started talking to the New Orleans Bowl a year ago at this time about a guaranteed spot for the champion in New Orleans, as not just to complete the 18 and 19 season, but then the new cycle that goes in 2020. So we've been talking to them about this. Season starts, continued conversation. And the bowl obviously is watching the regular season develop and the conference play develop, and we had conversation in early October, and it kind of started getting a little bit more serious, and we were able to do that deal 2 weeks ago, and again, I think it even brings greater attention to this game. Little irony, and I mean, you talk about coincidence. I'm driving up the mountain yesterday at about 5 o'clock, and a big semi pulls out of one of the little towns down there at the bottom of the hill, and it's an R&L carrier semi truck coming up the hill to Boone. And little did that driver know that that there's two teams up here that are going to play for the R&L carrier bowl game in New Orleans. And then the other thing that we were able to do this week to guarantee the champion, because that was the other question I was going to get from you all, was, okay, if where's the loser of the championship going? Or where's the runner-up, or whatever, however we want to describe the team that doesn't win tomorrow. And we've been able to satisfy that question, I think, in a real positive manner, and that the Cure Bowl in Orlando was their turn up to select, and they were willing to take take either App State or Louisiana. And I think that has been well received. Once that happened, we were able to place Arkansas State, and the reason we were able to do that announcement like we did on Wednesday is that the Arizona Bowl is not an ESPN Bowl, and neither is the Cure Bowl. And ESPN has an embargo on when we can announce bowl matchups and bowl pairings, and it's not until Sunday afternoon. So we were able to kind of get behind that to make the Cure Bowl announcement, and then the next day the Arkansas State announcement. And that's been well received. If you follow the local media in Statesboro and Savannah, they've been reporting now for the last 48 hours that Georgia Southern has accepted an invite to the Montgomery Bowl, the Raycom Camellia Bowl. I can't confirm that, but if you assume that they're accurate with their reporting, that would mean that, somebody tell me, where does Troy go? What's that? Yeah, so you said it, not me. That was the point. So, however you want to report that, feel free to report that as you so desire. So, with that, I think we've got as much time as we need to, whether we want to go down any of those avenues, any of the other. I will. Tomorrow's going to be special for me. It really is, and this will be my second inaugural football championship game as a commissioner. And 1996, the WAC had its inaugural game, and I can remember that game vividly. I mean, I can see the weather, I can see the two teams. It was BYU and Wyoming, and it was a meaningful game. And I can see all the elements of it. And what's interesting is that a year later, the second game, I can't remember a thing about it. And I got a feeling that tomorrow is going to be that type of day here in Boone and at the stadium. I think it's going to be a spectacular day. It'll be another day that I can remember for the rest of my life. So.
Again, quick reminder, if you can please silence any devices that you've got. If you've got a question, we'll bring a microphone to you just like we did before, and remember to indicate your name and affiliation when you ask that question.
Whitney, can you bring me a water, please?
We'll start down front here and then go to the back.
Thank you.
All right, Steve Bear, Watauga Democrat here in Boone. First off, congratulations on your retirement and all your success. There's one thing I was wondering about. You mentioned the Georgia Southern game. That was played on a Thursday. That's a short week. Is there a way to is that ESPN driven where you can't eliminate Thursday games? Because it seemed to me like both teams were kind of sluggish early, and then Thomas got hurt. But I don't think either team had a bye before that game, and I'm wondering if there's a way where your teams play either on Wednesday or whatever on a Tuesday where they can get a bye beforehand and kind of save their bodies.
Yeah, you make a really good point. As much as we don't like the Tuesday Wednesday games, just because of what it does to the schedule. It takes both teams out of the schedule the Saturday before and the Saturday after. From a conference standpoint, scheduling standpoint, that really is a detriment. We only have to do it twice, and there's a reason that we only have to do 2 of those midweek games just because of what it does to the rest of the schedule. The Thursday night games now have been around for 20 years, if not longer. And that was ESPN's first entree off of the traditional Saturday games. And Thursday has become a regular, and not just in the Sun Belt. I mean, all the majority of the conferences will play at least an array of Thursday night games, and Thursday night football has become a staple on college. Your point that you ask a coach, would you rather play Thursday or Tuesday or Wednesday? They're going to say we'd rather play Tuesday or Wednesday just because of the preparation time and the recovery time for the next week. But I think Thursday night games are going to be part of the Sun Belt deal, for the next 8 years as long as we have the contract. We try to do our best to schedule the teams in advance of that game. That the home team is usually going to be playing on the road, and that the visiting team would have played the previous week at home to try to mitigate at least balance the travel demands. But I don't see how we get out of that, Steve.
Is that contractual with ESPN?
Yes, it is contractual. Yes, and it's where the value is. People ask why we play the Tuesday Wednesday games. Those are valuable games for the ESPN, and they're paying us X for those 2 games and the 6 or 7 Thursday night games that we have, and now with ESPN Plus, we may get an occasional Saturday game if it's a non-conference game, against a good opponent. That may be a Saturday game. This year, Troy and Boise State was a Saturday game on ESPN Network. 2 years ago was the Wake game on Saturday. But I think that those Thursday night games are going to be there.
David Rogers, Blowing Rock News. You mentioned your previous experience with WAC, WC. Reflecting back on that time, what lessons might have you brought from that experience back then to your administration of the Sun Belt now, and then I guess the follow-up question is, how much has the business of college sports, and especially the media impact, how much has that changed really for the core experience?
You know, my first commissioner job was the Mid-American Conference from 1990 to 1994. And I have an opportunity from time to time to speak to, you know, to academic classes that are studying sports administration. And I reflect that my entire what will now be 29 years as a commissioner, that in 1990 is when that business side started. That's when the SEC went to 12 teams and started a football championship game. It's when the Big Ten added Penn State and became 11 teams. And it was when the SEC and the Big Ten assumed their television rights from the College Football Association and did their own TV deals. And that's when we really saw the economics of college football and college sports change dramatically. And you know, the 18 years that I was at the WAC saw, you know, myriad of changes from the Bowl Alliance to the BCS to now the CFP, and what that has done to the importance and the interest and the excitement of college football. So I mean, I feel like I've been like my career has been in the height of college football, and I've been able to enjoy all that, but also I see the danger that has occurred, and all you have to do is look at a couple of the major lawsuits that are going on today. If college football hadn't gotten so important and hadn't gotten so much attention, you know, the plaintiffs' lawyers may not have, and if the pockets of the NCAA hadn't gotten so deep, that the plaintiffs' lawyers may not have been, you know, looking for opportunities to, you know, to bring class action suits against, you know, colleges and conferences in the NCAA. So, you know, the idea that we've created such a valuable entity as college football, with it comes some other concerns and issues. As far as my time at the WAC and what I've learned, some people would probably say that, you know, I learned at the WAC that 16 teams was too big. And, you know, the book that I will write at some point in time, you know, will delve into that 16-team WAC that didn't have the staying power to make it. And the main reason they didn't is that there wasn't enough money to go around to satisfy all 16 of those schools. And if you look at what I've tried to do now with the Sun Belt, is I've come full circle that smaller is better, that the 10-team league that the Sun Belt has is better than 12. It's better than 14. It's better than 16, at least for the Sun Belt right now. And the reason I say that is the scheduling piece. The fewer teams you have, the less losses you're going to have. The fact that the Sun Belt is 10 teams and we were 21 and 18, and Conference USA is 14 teams and they were 10 games above 500 or whatever the number was, I think is a direct result of that. So, you know, the 10-team league, that football league that, you know, that I'm leaving for the next commissioner, I think is in tremendous position to continue to get better. And as I said, you know, our goal is to be that #1 spot, and to have that, you know, that team play on New Year's Day in Phoenix or Atlanta or Dallas or wherever the group of 5 team may go.
We got one in the back. Down front.
Ethan Joyce, Winston-Salem Journal. Just to go back to the college football playoff again, you know, you mentioned if UCF loses, you're kind of looking at the Mountain West, and that's a matchup that'll feature 2 CFP ranked teams. So how do you make the argument if, say, the Boise State does lose? How do you make the argument for the Sun Belt winner over a championship that features, I think, number 22 and 25 or 23 and 25?
Yeah, Fresno State definitely is 25, but we don't know if App State is 26. And what is the gap between App State and Fresno State today? I think it's pretty narrow. They don't go any further, but I think that would be my my take on whether App State could jump over Fresno State. How much has the committee really drilled down and evaluated App State? How much were they aware? Yes, they are aware that that Zach Thomas went down. Interesting little piece on this. Each conference, all 10 conferences, are earmarked for 2 committee members, and those committee members are in charge of knowing everything about Conference X, Y, and Z. Our 2 committee members, and I'm not going to divulge who they are. We had 4 calls during the course of the year. Our first call with the committee was the afternoon before the Georgia Southern App State game, and at that time, Troy was undefeated in league and had the win over Nebraska, and Georgia Southern had started their little hot streak, and we really had 3 teams at that time that we were promoting to the committee, and App State having just been ranked that week, so we had a top 25 ranked team, and I remember saying to the 2 committee members, well, I hope we're not going to jinx them by talking like this. And it goes back a little bit to last year Troy beats LSU and all the hype and the thought that they're going to be in the hunt. And they play South Alabama the next Thursday at home and get beat. Sure enough, Zach goes down and the game turns and they get beat. But I reminded the committee members, we had a call on Wednesday with the committee, the 2 committee members, and I reminded them of that phone call on that Thursday before that game, and they remembered it. And an interesting sideline. Again, I won't tell you what committee member it is. This committee member said, "I just want you to know, I didn't know that much about the Sun Belt Conference before this season, but I now know just how good the Sun Belt is," and that I think is again an example of Sun Belt credibility, Sun Belt integrity, Sun Belt relevance. We are a relevant conference, and the conference has come so far, I think, in the last 5 years, and my first trip to App State was in the spring of 2014 when I'd been at Georgia Southern earlier in the day, and I don't fly, unlike some of my commissioner colleagues, I do not fly private, and I wish I did. In fact, I joke with Greg Sankey from time to time, saying that I sure wish I could borrow your plane on occasion. But on that particular day, the only way that I was going to get to Boone to make the announcement 4 hours after me, and David was there, and some of you guys were there, and so I flew into Hickory, on a private plane, and came up here, and so that was my first time up the mountain, and talking with and to extend this invitation, and our Chancellor Peacock was there, and we were talking about the road construction project that had just started, and he said, "I'm just telling you that's going to get done. That's going to get done before He didn't say before your first championship game, because we didn't know for sure when we were going to have our first championship game. But to make the story better, I'm going to say that Ken Peacock said, I guarantee you that road's going to be done before we host the first championship game." And yesterday afternoon, after I passed that R&L carrier, I started, and I didn't know that it was done. And I was telling my wife, I said, I think, it should be done, should be close to being done. And sure enough, it was done yesterday. So that was kind of a cool, might be my last trip up the mountain, but it's the first time with 4 lanes the whole way. So. But anyway, back to, and I'd be remiss, if I didn't acknowledge, what App State has, and Scott and I were talking earlier about just how good the Sun Belt has been for App State and how good App State has been for the Sun Belt. And I would say also that the 2 teams that we have here, with Louisiana being a charter member back in 2001, that first year of the Sun Belt, we've got a charter member of Sun Belt football, and we've got one that is, one of the newbies, so to speak. And I think that even makes it a more unique championship game tomorrow with the mold, the way that we've been able to mold these teams together and to benefit from history and tradition of all the members, and to see a Georgia State that just started football 10 years ago, and South Alabama that have gone to bowl games. There have been teams that have tried to make that move that have never gone to a bowl game. And Georgia Southern now is going to their second one, and Georgia State has gone to 2. But it's, I think, just been a perfectly a great blend of App State and Georgia Southern coming out of the FCS and their history and tradition, and some of the historical, the Troys and the UL Arkansas States that have been the stalwarts, and yet we're seeing almost 7 teams get to be bowl eligible. Coastal Carolina almost makes it bowl eligible their first year. In fact, they were favored in that game against South, JD, and it was a great game, and they had a big comeback in the 4th quarter and almost made it. So, one in the back.
Kenneth Reese with WataugaOnline.com. You mentioned for the last 3 or 4 weeks, this game really could have been anywhere. Well, among 3 or 4 schools anyway. And then you also talk about your trip to Boone back then and even now. Obviously, the Sun Belt, you had a plan no matter where this game was going to be played. Did any particular location, maybe here, was it going to be more of a logistical issue than other places, or what kind of steps did you have in place for each individual school?
The longer it took for us to be able to make that decision, the more difficult it got, regardless of whether it was going to be in Troy or Boone or or one of the Louisianas or Arkansas State. My staff has done an unbelievable job in the last 2 months getting ready for this, and when people walk into that stadium and see, and I heard Scott saying that, the A's still there. Well, we would have liked that to be the Sun Belt logo, but we know that that's part of the home field. But the banners and the drapes and the way that we've been able to create that stadium, coming up just a couple hours ago up the road and see the banner that's out there that has both teams on it and the Sun Belt banner. I mean, I think we've created a really cool, neutral site, even though it's a home site. But as long as tonight, it stays 50 degrees or 40 degrees and there's not, sleet and ice and snow, I think we're going to have a great venue. And as I've told people, there's no better place, not just in the Sun Belt, but, throughout college football, than Boone, North Carolina, and this stadium for a backdrop for college football. And again, the 2 teams that are rich in tradition are playing. So, but anyway, my staff has done a great job. They probably wish that somebody would have clinched it, 3 weeks ago to make it a little bit easier. But they all got here a couple days ago,
And now you just gave our chamber director a great quote to use in his marketing now.
We'll be recording that.
Which one?
Yeah,
The road?
exactly.
All of it?
Got time for maybe 1, 2 more questions at the most here with Commissioner. Anybody else?
I should have asked my staff this. In fact, what's it called when you're in court and you ask for a recess? John, could you come up here, please? McKelway, no, serious. I'm being totally serious. I've got to ask permission about whether or not I bring this point up or not.
While John approaches the bench, just a reminder again that at 3 o'clock we'll have Louisiana head coach Billy Napier, Jacques Boudreau, and Kevin Dotson from Louisiana joining us. So this is first press conference in FBS history that's under official review.
I've been known to.
Now to our referee, Karl Benson.
I've been known to shoot from the hip from time to time, and sometimes it gets me in trouble. But what you'll see tomorrow is something that's a little unique. Is that App State will be in all black uniforms, and Louisiana will be in all red uniforms. And there have been several, little curveballs thrown our way this week as you plan for an event you've never had before. We really didn't address a uniform issue, that we just assumed that, App State would wear dark and visiting team UL would wear white. Well, there is an NCAA rule that allows both teams to wear dark colors during the regular season if both teams agree. This is not regular season. So the jurisdiction comes to the event organizer, the event manager, and that's the Sun Belt Conference. And so when we were approached by UL that they wanted to wear red uniforms, what we did is that we, Steve Shaw, our supervisor of officials, is also the Secretary of Rules editor for the NCAA. And he looked at both uniforms from an officiating standpoint, saw video, put them on film, and concluded that there would not be an issue for the officials for the red and the black. So we're gonna have a pretty colorful array out there of red and black uniforms. So kind of makes this unique. So, but anyway, I didn't know if that's something that because I think one of the questions you're all going to have tomorrow, probably when you see them come out on the field, is, wait a second, how can they both be in dark? Did UL leave their uniforms behind? Or who was it this year that uniforms didn't get? ULM took a trip to Wisconsin, maybe, and they didn't have their white uniforms, and they had to wear the dark, and Wisconsin switched for them or something like that. So. Anything else that I can help you with? All right. With that, again, appreciate your being part of history here, and it will be a memorable Saturday in Boone, North Carolina. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll be back at 3 o'clock with the press conference with Louisiana.